We Invest in Nationhood WIN is among the new parties seeking to reshape Guyana's political landscape as the country heads into the September 1 general and regional elections. The movement is positioning itself as an alternative to the dominant political blocs with promises of unity, empowerment, and a new style of governance. At its helm is businessman turned politician Azruddin Mohamed, the party's presidential candidate. But his political journey begins under the shadow of U.S. sanctions in 2024, imposed over allegations of tax evasion and gold under declaration, an issue that has sparked controversy and debate at home. Still, WIN continues to press forward with its message, reaching out to Guyanese who are looking for a different path. The question now is whether this new party and its leader can make a meaningful impact on the national stage. On this edition of Sources, WIN candidate Tabitha Sarabo-Halley, a former APNU+AFC Member of Parliament, discusses the issues at hand and the party's vision for a better Guyana. Welcome to Sources. I'm your host, Svetlana Marshall. Tonight, we'll be taking a closer look at We Invest in Nationhood WIN, one of the 6 political parties contesting the September 1st general and regional elections. To do so with me, I have candidate Tabitha Sarabo-Halley. Tabitha, welcome to Sources.
Thank you for inviting me, and it's good to be here.
How have you been? I know that you've been on the ground, on the campaign trail. What it is like?
It has been good. I like being on the ground with the people. I like hearing from the people. I think people think of politics as just the rough and tumble in Parliament, but I think the essence of politics is being able to represent the people well, and you cannot do that if you're not hearing from them, if you're not on the ground with them, understanding where they are, how they feel about what is happening in the country, and trying to find solutions together. So it has been a good ride for the last couple of weeks.
I've spoken to you many times in the past 5 years, but as a Partnership for National Unity Member of Parliament, you've since resigned from the coalition and now you're a WIN candidate. What sparked that interest and that change?
Well, to be quite frank, the public would recognize that, over the last 5 years, there was some amount of apathy in the population as to what would come next coming into the 2025 elections. There was a sense that there were some leadership gaps, and persons were not feeling as though there was a lot of pushback to what was happening in government. I personally felt the same way, and I honestly decided that I was going to take a back seat this time around. I was not going to be a part of the political process leading into the 2025 elections. But then something changed in the society. The people began to speak. They were looking for someone that would understand their plight, someone that they believed understood where they were coming from and would fight for them. And the people chose a movement, and I felt that it was my what I could do was to assist the people in ensuring that their views and their dreams of what could possibly happen in Guyana be fulfilled. And because of that, I decided to join the WIN movement. The people, you can see all across the country, from Region 1 to Region 9, the amount of support that the WIN campaign has is because people want something different. And the least I could do is help support them to see that change happen.
Yeah. Oftentimes when we hear about WIN, people talk about, they want something different, it's a movement, But what exactly resonates with you when you think about the party?
I think what resonates is a number of things. One, that what the movement represents is a movement that caters and looks after and listens to the needs of the people. I think for too long the population, they felt as if they're not being heard. as if their needs, their desires, their views on what is happening in society was just not being heard or catered to by those that were in the halls of power. And so they were looking for someone and a movement that sort of gravitated to them and understood their cries and responded to them even though they were not in the halls of power. And I think that is what have caused persons to gravitate to the WIN movement. To be quite frank, the presidential candidate of the WIN movement has been doing a lot of humanitarian work for a very long time. It has not been just over the last year. I can actually say he has put a pause since he became the presidential candidate for fear of people thinking that he is trying to bribe persons, right? And so over a number of years, his family has been involved in a lot of humanitarian work across the country. And so people feel and understand and recognize his humility, his wanting to see people do better and live better lives and have better homes where they can raise families. And so people resonate with that because you see someone and now an entire movement that is different from the politics of old.
I get that. Now, I want to take you back to 2023 when Reuters published a report, and in the report it addressed the issues of both drugs trafficking and gold smuggling. And at the center of that report was Mr. Azruddin Mohamed, his father Nazar Mohamed, and their businesses. And if I could read part of the article, it says that the DA, the FBI, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security were all investigating the Mohammeds on suspicion of smuggling Colombian cocaine and illegally mined Venezuelan gold to the U.S., Europe and the Middle East. Now, the Mohammeds have all denied these allegations since the report was published. But what do you believe to be true?
At this particular point, and even then, the reports were out. I do not know what was the basis for the report. I have not seen any documentation, and I can go off of what the Mohammeds have said, which they have denied the reports. Until anything else comes out to substantiate those reports, I have to go with that fact. I, however, believe that the WIN movement is not what the Mohammed's family business was about. I think we have to understand the difference between the two, and the persons and the team that are a part of the WIN movement and make up the WIN movement is more than just Azruddin Mohamed and his family. And I think that the people of Guyana have recognized that what it is that we are trying to do for the country is to better their lives, and I think that is what has drawn persons to the WIN movement.
Okay, but I want to stick on this topic a little bit because it's important that we address these issues. Yes, the party, WIN, is separate and apart from the Mohammed family, yes, right? But at the helm of the party is someone who 1 year after this report was published, in 2024, was sanctioned by the US. Now, this is just not a simple issue. He was sanctioned by a superpower. And again, the allegation is tax evasion and on the declaration of gold, two serious allegations. Do you think you could easily separate the two to say, well, again, he's denied these allegations, but how do you separate the two? The individual that has been sanctioned and the person who heads WIN?
Well, you see, I think it's two-part. I think I understand persons' issues with the sanction. I understand the hesitancy that people would have about what happened or what the Reuters report has said. But at this particular stage, there has been no charge laid and nobody has been found guilty of anything. There have been reports of accusations. The family has denied it, and until something has been done in terms of a court of law where somebody has been charged and found guilty, we cannot just go off of just speculation at this particular point. What the country has seen is a man and a family who has helped a lot of people across the board, no matter their ethnicity, no matter where they are in whichever region they are, and people have responded to that. And quite frankly, I can understand, and I want to reaffirm this. I can understand the hesitancy because of reports, but the reality is that the people of Guyana are making a choice. GECOM has decided that WIN has done nothing that should exclude it from the political process. And so we are here at this particular point because as far as our country laws are concerned, nobody has been charged or found guilty of anything. And so the people have chosen the movement, and we are moving forward.
Well, he has been charged locally, just for the record. I think with the GRA case relating to taxes and I think it's fraudulent declaration of the cost of the vehicle or something.
But I found guilty. What I meant is,
I
was talking about specifically to the Reuters report.
Oh, okay.
But in terms of the GRA, yeah, that is in court, and I can't speak more on that. But I was talking specifically to what you said about the Reuters report.
But do you think that the entire issue has affected the party's credibility?
Well, the people will make a choice. The people will decide on whether or not it has affected the credibility of the party. Based on what we are seeing on the ground, I would say that those reports have not affected the credibility of the party. I think the people will make a choice on September 1st whether or not they would like to see a different kind of political structure, political organization at the helm of power than what existed over the last 59 years.
Okay. Now, some critics have said that these sanctions have overshadowed Wynn's message in a sense. And I want to allude to something that the Vice President and even the President of Ghana would have said. You know, Mohamed has been described as a criminal. He's part of a criminal enterprise. And so when they speak, they're officials, they're local officials, and they're speaking to the masses. How has that affected the party's campaign on the ground, if at all?
I don't think it has affected I don't think it has negatively affected the campaign. What the current president should remember is that he had 19 charges when he was running for president. And he became president of the Republic of Guyana. And so to suggest that because things are at a particular stage that the person should be denied the ability to run for any position in government, that is not what the law says. The law says you have to be found guilty of something to bar you from being able to run for office. And at this particular point, nobody has been found guilty of anything that would preclude them from being able to run for office. And if you look at what the views on the ground are by the population, by the people all across the country, is that they resonate with, their views resonate with Mr. Azruddin Mohamed. They believe that he understands them, that he is humble, and that he cares about them. He cares about their needs and their desires and what it is that they need to ensure that they're lifted up out of poverty. And I think that is what has drawn them to the Win movement.
Now, in arriving at the decision to contest the elections, did the party take into consideration the impact the sanctions would have on the country as a whole if they're not lifted and if he is elected or Win is elected to govern the country?
Now, I can say personally, before I joined the movement, those are questions too that anybody would ask. And I had those questions for myself. And at the end of the day, Guyana is a sovereign country. And the Guyanese people have a right to choose their leaders. And once those leaders have been chosen, we will deal with the implications of that. I have seen across the world where persons who have been sanctioned for one reason or the other became prime minister, became president, and the same superpower that we were referring to had to engage with them and engage with them on that level. And so to use the word as sanction as to block an individual from their democratic right to be a part of the political process and to stop people from voting for that particular individual, I think it sort of suggests that our internal laws and that we're not sovereign and that we abide by the laws of another nation. And I don't think that is where we are as a country.
Okay. It is also believed by some that the Mohammeds are using the elections to have the sanctions lifted and to save his family business. What do you say to that?
Well, I do not know. I was not in a conversation where that was the agenda item. I cannot speak to that. But my basic belief is that the movement is bigger than the family at this point. The movement is a recognition that there has been a gap in leadership in the country. And I think people need to understand what is happening in Guyana. While we want to focus on the sanctions, the reality is that people do not feel as though there's leadership that they can trust in this country. And because of that, that gap that exists, someone came and filled that gap. And that person came because they were humble, because they have shown time and time again that they were for the people, and they understand the needs of the people. And so that is where we are as a country.
Okay, now that we've cleared the air on the sanctions and you've stated your position and the party's position and what those sanctions mean for the party and for the country, let's talk about some of the challenges. Since the party launched its campaign, in fact, since the party was launched, it has encountered a number of challenges. One, we see, according to the party and according to Mr. Azruddin Mohamed, who spoke to us some months ago at the court, that he is facing charges, and the government, according to him, is upping the pressure on him as a way to have him back out of the political race. Now, we're all just 1 week away from the election, so we know at least now that's not happening. But tell me, what are some of the primary challenges facing the party? I know one is that of the relation with the banking sector.
Yes.
Address that first, and then we could discuss other issues.
Okay, yes. As you rightfully said, the issue with the banking sector. The banks have decided that all those persons who are on the candidate list for win, that for some reason they no longer need the services of the bank, and they decided that they would close their bank accounts. In theory, that just seems like, okay, they sent a letter and we have to figure out where we were going to put our money from now on. But it has had some other implications for a lot of persons who are public servants, who do not know now when they get paid, or they're getting paid this week, how they're going to receive their monies. Because basically the public service, you would know, the money moves into their bank account. Now their bank account is closed. They have no way of knowing how it is that they will get paid at the end of this month. Other persons who had loans with the banks were told that they had that 1 month to pay off a 5-year loan, because the banks have now closed their accounts. So it has had a rippling effect. But I can tell you that the candidates and even those persons who are supporters that have been affected have all banded together and said that we have to see this through, because this level of victimization has to end, and it would not end if we cower at this moment.
How many persons have been affected to date?
Approximately 30, but I think it's a bit more, but the last count that I recall seeing was 30.
And would you go so far as to name the banks that have taken such actions against the candidates?
GBTI, Demerara Bank, Citizens Bank, and Scotia Bank.
Okay. I saw somewhere NBS was listed.
Yes, but I don't consider NBS a bank, but yes,
Yeah.
you were right. NBS is also part of that process, which was quite intriguing, because NBS does not have an accompanying bank in the United States. They don't have Visa. They're still using the book. So for them to be part of that process, that there's some risk involved in them having persons have bank accounts there, was laughable. But we all understand it's part of the victimization that we'll go through. But as you said, we have 1 week left.
I'm happy that you mentioned the corresponding banks in the U.S. and the issue of risk. Now, that is one of the arguments that have been put forward, that failure to discontinue the service with these individuals, win candidates, could result in corresponding banks in the U.S. severing ties with these local banks. So for them, there is an implication. Do you see that implication? Do you think that's a reasonable argument?
Well, if it's a reasonable argument, then what is NBS's argument? So that's the first question. So that NBS has no corresponding bank, but they have decided to do that. What is their risk? So that's one. Two, based on even the Carter Center report recently said that they believe that the banks are being over-complying with what the OFAC has said. And even OFAC has said that the way in which it is being, the results or the effects that have been happening in Guyana does not register with what the OFAC sanctions mean and what are required by banks to ensure that they are in line with the OFAC sanctions. So we understand that is victimization. The banks, when they sent the letters to the individuals, did not say anything about risk. They just said internal policy. When we asked for clarification of what those internal policies might be, they never gave us a response. So we understand that it's not any risk, but it's victimization that we're going through, because the government has recognized that the WIN movement has gone further than they expected, has had more reach than they expected, and could very well become the next government of Guyana.
But do you think this is a representation of a larger issue when it comes to the private sector?
Oh, definitely. And I think, let me put it this way. I have, and it's not the entire private sector. Let me start with that. There are businesses that are not part of the institutions of the Private Sector Commission or the GECI, who are not a part of that are independent of that are doing their business and not a part of the fray of the politicization of the private sector. So I want to first highlight that. But one cannot deny that the private sector seems so linked to the politics of the day, that they are not only the politics of the day, but the government of the day, that they feel that they have no other choice but to do whatever they're asked to do by this particular government.
Okay. So let's stick on this private sector issue. Aside from the banks closing the accounts of WIN candidates, the presidential candidate of WIN, according to what I've read, has been blocked from using certain air services. Is that true? And is it the same situation for candidates? Are they too facing this issue? And what are other issues that have come up as an attempt to stymie, if I could use that word, WIN's campaign on the ground?
Yes, it is true. The presidential candidate, Mr. Azruddin Mohamed, has been barred, for want of a better word, from using the airlines. He has stated that publicly, and he stated that he has actually called persons to find out what is happening, and they basically said to him that they were instructed not to allow him on the flights. So now that was him, and so he thought it had to do with him alone. But now recently, we were trying to get a flight for the General Secretary of the party and the campaign manager, Ms. Odessa Primus, and also Ms. Dawn Hastings Williams, and we were told that they too now cannot go on flights. When we were trying to get our vehicles on ferries to go over to Region 2, we were told that our vehicles cannot go on the ferry. And there was no rationale for it other than the fact that we are WIN candidates and we are trying to further the campaign in other regions. And so there have been a lot of instances where there are attempts to stymie our ability to reach the people, in especially the far-flung areas in the interior of Guyana, but we have found ways around it. They can't close all the roads, even though we may not be able to go on a boat. So the presidential candidate has shown, and I can tell you this, Svetlana, I do not know where he gets the energy, but he has been across the country day in, day out, meeting the people, because he understands that the people need to hear from him. The people have actually asked for him. There are communities in Region 9 that want to see him before the elections, but we just don't know how we can get there in time to get back out to continue the campaign. And so the reality is that as much as they try to stop us, we have just found other ways to meet the people. And in those instances where we can, the people understand that it's not because we do not want to reach them, but because of the victimization that we are facing.
Have these actions do have somewhat of an impact, a significant impact on the campaign? I know you said in certain regions, like Region 9, where you have to fly in, to get out in a day.
Yeah, it has impacted our ability to move faster, to go to meet the people. What would have taken 1 day takes 3 days, which stretches out how long we have to campaign in a different region, because as you are aware, we're 3 months old, if so much. And so there's a lot of groundwork that we have to cover as a new organization to make sure that we're doing all that we can to ensure that everything is in line for our September 1st elections. And so flights being on the ferry instead of going on the speedboat, because once you get on the speedboat, once you reach on the other side, now you have to figure out your transportation to continue moving. Whereas if you're in your own vehicle, you can just drive. And so they're trying to impede, but I think the people of Guyana are waking up to the realities of the victimization that is being leveled against the movement, and it has also helped us, because people are recognizing that level of victimization and say that this is not what we want as a country. We don't want this type of governance in our country, and we need something different and something new. And so they've actually drawn more people to us because of it.
Okay. Now the party has moved to writing. They've written just this past week, the UN Secretary General, as well as the CARICOM Secretary General, registering its concern regarding the decisions of the banks to close the accounts of candidates and the implications of such. Could you elaborate a bit on that move? Why was it necessary to go to that extent to write the Secretary General of the United Nations and the CARICOM?
Okay, because when things remain localized, I think people feel that they have the right to do as they deem fit. But Guyana lives in a world of laws and of treaties and of human rights treaties that they have signed on to. And so I think the decision was made that we needed to take this issue and this concern of victimization and discrimination further afield than just the borders of Guyana. And so we have written to those international organizations to help them to understand, and so that they can now place their eye on what exactly is happening in Guyana as to whether or not we are still a democratic society or we're moving towards something else, which is not what I think most nations of the world would appreciate at this juncture. So we're hoping that we get a response from them. They have acknowledged receipt of our letters, and now we're waiting an official response to those complaints.
You mentioned earlier the Carter Center and its pre-elections report on the atmosphere here in Guyana ahead of the September 1 elections. Are you satisfied that the issues affecting WIN was articulated in that report?
Yes, well, I think the Guyanese public should recognize that this is something that most observers don't do. Generally, they come, they register all that is happening before the elections, and then they would give a report after the elections would have been completed. They would probably give a preliminary report on the day of the elections. They would say whether things are going fine at the polling station, and then we will get a report after. That the Carter Center saw it fit to release a preliminary report, I think should register to persons that there's something amiss in Guyana, that things are not going the way that it should, and that the level of victimization is to an extent that required a preliminary report. We at WIN we are content that the issues that WIN raised, and not only WIN, other parties raised during the process, have been captured in that particular report. And even though there's some concern about the issue of the voters list in that report, I think the issues concerning WIN have been adequately stated in that report, and the only hope is that the governing party would recognize their errors, and so from here on out, as we enter the last week of elections, they would fall back in line with what is just and fair during an electoral process.
Okay. Now, you spoke earlier about, persons wanting to hear from Mr. Azruddin Mohamed. They want to see him, they want to speak with him, they want to share their concerns, as well as other candidates, yes, I suspect, of the party. But what are the primary messages being taken to those communities? Tell me more. I know the party recently launched its Manifesto, and I would love for you to get into some of the key projects and programs and initiatives that the party intend to take on should win the election.
No, I thank you for asking that question. When you go into the community, what you hear from the people is that with all of this money that is coming into the country, with all of the oil resources and the monies that are coming from our oil, that the people don't feel as if they're getting their just, their patrimony from it. When you go into the communities and you see how people are living, you're seeing the level of poverty that exists, people who are sick but can't get the proper medical care. The people, we were in North Sophia, where they were supposedly doing the road. They dug up a part of it and left it there for a couple of months now infested with mosquitoes, and there are a lot of children in that area, then you will hear dengue spread or something like that. And so people want, from the WIN movement, a sense of understanding the humanity of the people in the country and not just focusing on the brick and mortar type of development. And so in our manifesto, there's a lot of emphasis placed on that, a lot of emphasis placed on ensuring that people have adequate access to house lots. You cannot be saying that you want people not to squat, but you don't provide house lots in a manner in which people can actually go and live. We have had way too many years of persons being given a piece of letter, approval for a house lot, and when you get to the site is just a swamp, and now you have to build up that land. Then you have to go to the bank for a loan, and the bank says, well, first you have to start your foundation and get your foundation finished. And how do you have the money? Do you have the money after paying $1 million for the house lot to now start your foundation to get the loan to complete the house? And so one of WIN's initiatives is to, one, ensure that once you get that approval letter, your utilities are already in place at that particular site. We have also agreed, and that is in the manifesto, that you will get a foundation grant of $700,000 to build your foundation. Those are persons who are getting minimum wage or in that bracket. So that they will so that they can start their foundation, and so that they can go to the bank and say, well, at least I have my foundation done, so now I can get my loan to further build my house. So that is one thing that we thought was very important, because it stems, a lot of other things stem from not being able to have a home and a roof over your head that is comfortable for yourself and your family. A lot of social ills follow from that, when you feel you have to squat in a place where it's not conducive for your family. So that was one major thing that we looked at.
You also intend to reduce the cost by 40%? Or?
Yes, that is true. We intend to reduce the cost of a house lot by 40%. So that deals with housing. There are other things that deal with housing, but that is, I think, when we went into Tiger Bay, and I'm stressing this because of what I've seen over the last couple of months, we went into Tiger Bay and we saw how persons are living, going to the wharf. And they've been living there for 20-something years. They have no proper sanitary place. There's no toilet. And that is just a stone throw away from the State House. And you have a population of people that have to live in that condition because they've applied for house lots and they just simply can't get it. And as a Guyanese, and as somebody who, they say I'm a politician, even though I don't like to coin that term because of the negative connotations that come with it, I cannot understand why, as the fastest growing economy in this hemisphere and all of that, that we have people living under those conditions. And so what you see from the manifesto is an understanding of the needs of the people and trying to implement policies that will meet those needs. Now, another thing is for our young people. The country is primarily young. The percentage of our young people is, I think, is about over 60%. But what do we really have in store for our young people? There are brackets of young people that can find some resources that are there. But when you go into the communities, you recognize that the young people don't know that these things exist. They don't know that they can apply for certain things. And even those things that they're limited usually to people who are affiliated with the government. We need to be able to expand that as a country and get into those communities that actually need the help. And so with the manifesto, we have decided that we will put programs in place that would see young people from those communities getting readily access, not just to another certificate, but that allows them to move from where they are into proper employment that will get them out of the poverty that currently exists in their community. When it deals with youth and sports, we have, for example, our national athletes. We have heard time and time again, and we've seen our national athletes begging, asking for support as they train to go abroad. Even when they go abroad, they have to go to businessmen and ask them for some donation so that they can get into a hotel room and be comfortable, at least attempt to be comfortable as they compete under the flag of Guyana. We say no more to that. If you're a national athlete and you're training for a national game, you will be paid a salary. No more should you be trying to figure out how you're going to do your 9 to 5 and then getting your gears to try to train, and then when they get a gold or a silver, then we're all excited about them, but we need to be there at the beginning process to help athletes reach their fullest potential. So those are some of the areas, and not that they're not the others that are dealing with more technical stuff, but I think people are interested in things that help them help themselves to get out of the dire position they are in across the country.
How would you strike the balance between infrastructural development, the constructions of roads, bridges, schools, and so forth, and addressing some of the issues the regular man in the street faces? For example, people often complain about the cost of living.
Yes, and I think that is always a balance that needs to be made. And I remember in Parliament, I did a presentation about what development means. And most persons see development as the brick and mortar development, that you're seeing these big roads, these long roads and these bridges, and so you feel as if you develop. But development has a human element to it. And if you're building bridges and the people are not being developed, then you're building roads and people have to what? Eat the roads? I know that sounds like something a minister said before. But we have to find a balance between physical infrastructure and the human aspect of that development. And so, for example, in the cost of living, as you listed in our manifesto, we have 10 regional projects. And those regional projects, it's to help to stem the issue of cost of living. And that is bringing more development in infrastructure, but it also brings jobs. Because we believe in each region, there are key projects that can be done. For example, in Region 4, we intend to do a tiered market at Durban Park that would see a hub that does not exist, that allows for market vendors to be in that place. We have the bottom level that would have parking, and so people can go there to access all of their needs. But it would not be. It would be in a more humane place than what we saw at Stabroek Market. Stabroek, not that we are condemning Stabroek Market, but we went through Stabroek Market and the conditions that the vendors have to live in. Why would we want our people in those conditions? They're trying to eke out a living. They're trying to do the right thing. The men who are dealing with the fish, if you look at their conditions, it is humane, and no government should be happy talking about a bridge, a big bridge and all of these 300 or 400 roads, and you have your fishermen under a roof that once the rain falls, I don't know whether because they think it's fish, that it's okay for the rain to fall on the people and the fish at the same time. But we need to ensure that our markets are in a better condition all across the country. The presidential candidate has actually said that he will subsidize the fees for all markets across the country, so people won't have to pay those fees to the NDC or to the Mayor and City Council. He said it when you add it up, it's not something that we cannot do. So that's not something that the vendors would have to pay once we get into office. So there are in Region 9, as I speak, things are coming. We intend to open a beef factory and leather because there are a lot of beef. A lot of cows, a lot of cows that are reared in Region 9. We want to expand that, and we believe that a factory that moves it from the primary to a secondary level so we'll have a factory that deals with beef, with leather, and that will also cause us to have more jobs in that area. In Region 8, we will deal with mining, so we'll have a training school. And so we have a lot of plans throughout all of the regions that would help to not only reduce the cost of living, but create jobs. And of course, the biggest of them all is our wind and solar energy plant that we intend to have. We believe that with the gas to shore and all of that may come, that one of the major issues is our cost of production. And if we can reduce the cost of production, that would also assist in bringing down the cost of living. So it's not just about cash grants, even though cash grants people need the money now, but we have to find a long-term way of dealing with the cost of living crisis that we have in the country.
Okay. Now, with just 1 week left to the election, what's the response like? Do you think the party has what it takes and is raking in the support to win these elections?
My honest opinion, yes. when we go from region 1 to 10, the level of support is great. It's not just great, even in those communities where you say that you're not seeing people, when we speak to people on the ground, because of the level of victimization, people may not want to come on camera, they may not want to come out, and so even if you see those large meetings, and these are just community meetings, most of them, and the level of support you get at a community meeting, when you compare to other parties who've had community meetings and don't get that level of support, is an indication of the feeling on the ground of the people. We have done our assessment of it, and we believe that we have enough support to win the next elections.
Okay. Now, there are those who believe that the PPP would win, but by a minority, there will be a minority government in Parliament. Now, should this happen, it is believed that WIN would leverage its seats in the House to strike deals with the government, in a sense, to get what it wants. What do you say to that?
Now, our first agenda is to win the elections, and that is what we are focusing on. What happens afterwards, but I want to stress on two things. The presidential candidate has said that his interest is in what the people deserve. We are looking to win because we believe we have the right people, we have the capacity, and we have the I want to use the right word here. We understand the needs of the Guyanese people, and I think we know what the country needs as a unit, as a movement. And so we want to focus on winning the next elections, and that is where that's where our minds are at this point.
All right. Well, no. Should you win? Should win the next elections? The elections set for September 1. How would you ensure that the voices of people are heard in the national decision making? And now this is a major issue, because oftentimes people vote for a government and then they feel like they're left out in the cold.
Yes, and that is something that we understand, and as somebody who has been a member of Parliament, I understand that as well. One thing I can assure you is that our movement is not just about being in the AC rooms, as you could see, based on what we have been doing across the country. It is about constantly reaching out, ensuring that the people are heard. I know for a fact that all of the reports that we have received over the last couple of months, and even before that, are being compiled so that we get to those issues once we get into government. So those will be on our priority agenda once we get in, to ensure all of those issues and concerns that we heard throughout the country, that we deal with those matters as soon as possible.
You mentioned, these issues, and my next question was, what are the first set of initiatives? So in addition to the issues that you've heard, what are some of the key things? Some parties say within the first 100 days we'll do X, Y, and Z. What are the three things, if I could put a number to it, that the party says, this must be addressed? It's an issue that we've heard throughout the campaign, and it ought to be addressed once we get in government.
Well, one of the major issues, which is something that is easily done, can be easily done in the first 100 days, because we do have a 100-day plan with 100 things that we want to do in those 100 days, is that we are going to raise salaries within the first 100 days, because we understand the needs of the people. Salaries are too little. We also intend to engage the private sector as soon as is possible within the first 100 days, to let them understand that this $60,000 minimum wage cannot work at this particular point. It simply cannot work for persons who have to pay rent, get to work, get their children to school. How can you say it's okay for somebody to get $60-something thousand a month? And so they will be brought to the table very early, I can assure you, to have those engagements to help them to understand that they need to raise the minimum wage of the private sector. So so those are some of the things that I know that we are going to be focusing on the first 100 days. There are other issues that we raise in terms of starting the constitutional reform process. Well, it has been started because there's a team. We have to get that report, but those are more long-term things. But there are issues that have to do with the needs of the people that we are going to be taking very seriously in the first 100 days.
Okay. Now, what would the party do, and how would it address the issue of transparency and accountability? How would you ensure that, you're a very transparent government should you be elected, and that, you hold yourself accountable and people are allowed to hold you accountable?
So this is also something that is important to us, and we have talked about this as a team. The perception out there is that the government, once anybody gets into government, they just do whatever was being done before to continue that same type of transactions and so that have been done in the past. We believe that that has to stop. We intend to strengthen our anti-corruption network, our agencies. We intend to strengthen the FIU. We intend to ensure that all of our organizations that deal with corruption are in complete alignment with the UN anti-corruption unit. And so we believe that one of the things that needs to be dealt with is corruption. We also believe that, for example, the current Commission of Information, we need to look into that. I don't think the current structure helps the people. And so we actually looked at the laws that deal with that particular commission and felt that we need to change it so that we can get someone that actually responds to the needs and the information that has been requested by the media and the general public as to what is happening. We also intend to release all the contracts that have been signed that people may not be aware of over the last 5 years or further, and we will continue to do that once in office. And it is our belief that if it is that we want to see what is best for this country, then we have to be a transparent government. We have to be different from what currently exists. And so we intend to put all processes and procedures in place to ensure that we remain transparent as a government once we get into office.
How do you tackle crime and security?
No. We were actually having a conversation last evening about what is happening in the police force and the issue of crime, and it's not a one-pronged approach. The issues of poverty cannot be alleviated from the discussion. The issues of ensuring that persons who are in law enforcement understand their role and their responsibility has to be part of the conversation. Ensuring that persons who are part of the Guyana Police Force and all of those other joint services, they recognize that their role has to be to ensure that there is security in the country and people feel safe. And so we intend to put agencies and systems in place to alleviate crime. Now, we have CCTV cameras. When we're walking around in our communities, we see them blinking, like, they're obviously alive and they're working and people are seeing us. And so the fact that so many crimes are unsolved seem to be, we try to understand why. And then there must be a lot of emphasis placed on once persons get to the matter of the court, that the court has the independence to make decisions that are not politically aligned or anything like that. And so we will take our hands off the court, we will take our hands off the police, and ensure that they can act professionally when dealing with crimes that are that come up in our country.
How also would you manage the country resources? We have this budding oil and gas industry now. We have other sectors, rice, sugar, bauxite, coal and diamond mining and so forth. How would you ensure that the economy is further diversified and that we as a country prudently manage our resources and the revenues we garner from such?
Now, when you look at what is happening in a lot of those industries, it's one, we have the level of corruption where people feel as if they need to pay something to get something, and we need to stop that. If it is, for example, in the gold industry, we have to ensure that persons who want to go for example, they want a concession, that there's no backdoor way of getting it, that you go through the process and you get a concession based on whether once you fulfill all of the requirements. I think a lot of these things are not only policy, because I think the policies are there. It is the implementation and sticking to the rules that seem to be a problem. And those things happen because we have people at the helm of power who are in cabinet that allow some of these things to happen. And what we have, it has to be no tolerance for any corruption, no tolerance for the backdoor channels to getting things done. And so once we apply that to our cabinet, and I think they should all sign a statement saying that they will not, a code of conduct as it relates to governance and it relates to corruption, so that they understand the seriousness of how corruption affects the entire country, how it creates poverty, it reduces the amount of money we have to be able to help the people. And I think we understand that as a movement, and so once we get into power, we'll put the right systems in place. But not only the systems, I think it's a culture that has been created that we have to now eke people off of that, and over time we will do that.
Now, with just 1 week left to the elections, are you satisfied with the electoral systems that are in place? Do you think GECOM is ready for this election?
The right answer is no. I do not think they're ready, but we cannot not go to the elections because they do not have all the ducks in a row. We go to it with our eyes wide open, and we have to we are putting systems in place to curb what we may deem are as their inadequacies at this particular point. Even though we are a young party, a young movement, the persons who are involved are not new. Some of them are not new to what is happening. We have our elections agent, who is Dwight Hetberger, and he has been in the GECOM. He was the returning officer in the last go-round, so he understands the system. And so we have people who know what the possibilities are from the GECOM end. And so what we have to do is put as much as possible systems in place to not only curtail any of their issues, but also to register what may happen on elections day, should the need be to use it afterwards.
Would the party be feeling agents across the 2,700 plus polling stations?
Yes, all of them.
Wow. Okay. And
we have to keep, the people are saying they want us. They said they're going to vote for us, and the least we can do is to defend their vote. And so we cannot do that if we're not in all of the polling stations.
Okay. Now, what would you say to the electorate as we wrap up? What would be Wynn's key message to the people, and why should anybody vote for you?
Okay, thank you for that question. As you said, we're 1 week away from elections. And I want people to, a couple of things to be registered as we get into this last week. The first is that the We Invest in Nationhood came about because the people felt and believed that something different is necessary in our country. After 59 years, almost 60 years of independence, we have been too divided as a country. The majority of people have not been able to access the resources and the spin-offs of the resources that we have in our country. Before oil, there was gold, there's diamond, there's rice, there's sugar, but somehow that wealth that we have as a nation has not been able to get to the people, the majority of people. And what We Invest in Nationhood is saying to you is that there is a better way. There is a different way of doing politics, of doing governance in this country, and we believe that with all of the members of the team on the We Invest in Nationhood, in the We Invest in Nationhood party, that we will bring that change. Even as you look at what has happened over the last couple of months, the indigenous people, the African Guyanese population, the East Indian population, and the other populations that are there in the country, they have come on board with the We Invest in Nationhood. The momentum and the movement and the manifesto, they have all agreed with what it is that we have said to them that we are going to do, because they want something different. And we can say to you, and I am saying this to you, as a part of the movement, that I would not be here if I did not believe that the policies that we have laid out to you in our manifesto and what we have said to you personally across the country, that I would not be here if I did not believe that we will fulfill them when we are in government. And so we hope that as we get closer to the elections, that for those of you who are hesitant, that what do we have to lose? We have a political party on one side that has been there for so long, that has shown their true colors. Simply by just the victimization of these last couple of weeks, they've shown their true colors, and we know we can't have that continuing in our country. We have other political parties that have shown what they can offer and have offered in the past. And we say to you, give the blue a chance this go round, and let us see where we can take the country as a nation.
Tabitha, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of Sources to share the party's vision and plans for Guyana. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Sources. I've been your host, Svetlana Marshall. Stay well.